So, senior care is a unique business in our culture. And having worked in it for 20 years in the Lake Norman area, I actually benefited because my own mom had Alzheimer's. I was her caregiver for the last 6 months of her life. And unknowing at the time, that would help me greatly in my career in senior care because I've stood in the shoes of the clients that we serve at Visiting Angels. So each and every day, I know exactly what the challenges and emotions are when it comes to senior care.
That sounds very familiar to with what we just went through with my father-in-law. So we can hear you on that. So, hello, I'm Don,
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
and this is podcast number 178. And today we're speaking to Stuart Madow with Visiting Angel. And Stuart has worked in the senior care industry in Lake Norman area for over 20 years. He founded and continues to facilitate the area's largest monthly gathering of healthcare providers at the South Iredell Healthcare Forum. A resident of Mooresville for over 30 years, Stuart is originally from Northeast Ohio. Well, welcome, Stuart. Thank you very much for being part of this. We really appreciate that.
Thanks, Don. Glad to be here.
And and I can truly attest to the South Iredale Healthcare. I've been to it, and it is a really great organization. Um, but what I wanted, well, one thing we always do on our regular podcast when we don't have visitors, we put out tips. And you mentioned you have some tips, and I thought, well, maybe we at least start out with a couple of those tips right off the bat, and then we can go into the conversation if that's okay with you.
Sure, sure. So, some of the best tips, like I mentioned at the beginning, it can be quite overwhelming when thinking about care for your loved one, for your senior loved one, whether it's a spouse or it's a parent or relative or even a friend. And the biggest barrier that we often find is families don't know when to start the process. When should we look for care? What should we do? And so the biggest tip I can give is start early. Don't wait until something goes wrong. That's what a lot of people do. They wait for their loved one to fall and end up in the hospital, and now they have to go to rehab. Think about, hey, mom's not walking as well as she once had, and maybe her memory is getting worse. That's the time to start looking into care, not after the fact. That's probably the biggest tip I can have. The other one is reluctance for the actual person to receive care. We're all proud. We don't want to admit maybe we need help.
Mhm.
And so, the simplest and most straightforward advice I've given to families over the years that's worked is you just tell mom or dad, let's try it. We got nothing to lose. In home care, there's no long-term obligation. So let's give it a trial run, see what it's like to get some care. And 95 times out of 100, it works out well.
No, you brought up a really something we talk about all the time is getting the conversation started early, and it's tough because if they're in a good place, feeling good about, they don't want to talk about the future. They don't want to talk about that, so it is tough to do, but it is a really good tip.
It's human nature. I mean, we want to avoid things that are unpleasant. So, we don't want to think about aging. We don't want to think about what the needs might be. But the reality is, almost everyone's going to need some type of assistance as they age.
Yeah. I don't know if Stuart, if he's told you I'm an occupational therapist and I've worked in geriatric rehab for a long time. And yeah, I'm currently working at an independent living facility where a lot of people that live there need more care, but they can't afford assisted living because the cost is so much greater. So luckily there's a caregiver agency that works out of the building, so people can get like 15-minute increments of time, which you normally can't get, right? But again, there's that reluctance, there's that, and I see it all the time. I mean, that's what keeps me employed in short-term rehab is people fall, they wind up in the hospital, and then they're scrambling to figure it out. And it's so much easier if you take even if you just like have a conversation with someone like you at an agency to find out what options are.
Well, I don't like to scare people, but once I feel I've established a bond, I do give them the tough love and say, look, where do you want to end up? Do you want to end up in a nursing home? Most people say, no, that's not where I want to end up. So
Hmm.
let's be proactive. A lot of people living in independent living these days, whether it's cost factor or whether it's just the factor of not wanting to give up independence and go to assisted living, usually need some type of assistance. There's a whole complexity around accepting care and what the care might be. But accepting care is a barrier.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start up by just talking about visiting angels because I don't know a lot about it myself, even though I've been around you enough that I know some of it. But I wanted to just talk about like what does visiting angels do? What do you do with them? That kind of thing.
So, Visiting Angels is one of the largest senior home care providers in all of the United States. It's a franchise system. There's over 600 offices, but they're all locally owned. So, the company I work for is owned by a husband and wife team who are live in Huntersville, have been in the area almost their entire lives. They've owned the franchise for 14 years. Their name is Tina and Scott Goins. I've known Tina and Scott for over 30 years. We go way back, and we have a passion for taking care of seniors. And my role is to educate the community and coordinate care and get people connected to the type of home care that they need. The truth is, as I'm sure you both know, 90% of people want to stay at home. They don't want to be in a facility. I have worked in facilities, and unfortunately, only a small percentage of the population in a independent living or assisted living actually get out of their apartments and do anything. At home, you're in your comfortable environment.
Mm,
That's where every study in the world shows if you get home care, you're compared to a facility environment, you're going to live longer, you're going to be healthier, and you're going to be happier. That's the goal that Visiting Angels is trying to meet. And in our area, in the Lake Norman area, we've built up a tremendous reputation over the years because our caregivers have the compassion and skill to provide that care.
Yeah, I know my parents were in Indian Land, South Carolina, and my mom had care. My dad had Parkinson's, and I know she always liked the people with visiting angels. But obviously, it's a different. You said each of separate
I
franchises
do know
owned.
that franchise, and they're really well run. Yeah.
So yeah, because she used different caregiver services because there are a lot of agencies out there. So what sets visiting angels apart from some other
Well, that's
caregiver?
it's really interesting. So when I started in this business in Lake Norman, in the Lake Norman area 20 years ago, we had four home care companies. Now there's about 64 home care companies. Most of them are mom and pops. They don't really have a lot of staff, so they have trouble staffing what they are going. But there are larger ones. So Visiting Angels being one of the larger ones, we have just on our staff, we have 70 to 80 caregivers. We staff 98% of all of our requests that we get, which is tremendous. We struggle like everyone else, since COVID. Simply put, there isn't as many caregivers out there providing care for the aging population. We've really got a great system. We have dedicated staff who work on recruitment. So we haven't had a big problem with actually staffing. And what really separates us, besides the fact that we are able to deliver the service, is we are a multiple award-winning provider, local awards. People who live in this area who vote on home care services vote for Visiting Angels. I know a lot of companies, whether it's home care or hospitals, they all say, "Oh, we won this award." Well, there's a lot of national awards out there that some of them aren't quite legit. I have had companies call us, say, "Hey, why don't you join our system?" And then suddenly, a month later, you get an award. I don't believe in that. We don't do that. All we do are the locally run newspapers and media people who put out polls and have awards that are voted on by local people. And we're so proud that we've won so many of them over the last 5 or 6 years. So, and it's a testament once again to our caregivers and the reputation that they've earned. So. The one other differentiator we have is we have no service minimums. The industry in home care I don't know when it started, 4 or 5 years ago, started saying, oh, we can only serve you if you need 4 hours a day and 16 hours a week. I realized that's not serving the community. There's a lot of our clients who just need an hour of help. So we
Mhm.
can deliver that. We have no service minimums whatsoever, and that's very rare
Yeah.
nowadays in the home care industry.
And it sounds like because you have the staff to do that. I know other agencies, caregivers want full-time hours, and
Yeah.
so I know that's part of that challenge with that, just having navigated my mom doing that. But it's great that you have the staff to be able to provide that because, yeah, sometimes that's all they need.
That's the key. I mean, I hate to say it, but the larger providers these days are really the only ones that can deliver the consistency that people are looking for.
Mhm.
Well, and you mentioned about aging in place, and I think you kind of mentioned it in your explanation with visiting angels, but can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, I mean that, like I said, that is really what people want. Aging in place is staying at wherever you call home and making it work. Nowadays, there are so many allied services that we work with. There are companies that can put in grab bars in the home. They can put in ramps to make it more handicap accessible. They can widen doorways so that the big walkers or wheelchairs can get through in the home. So there's a lot of physical things that now can help aging in place. Plus, there's other providers. We work very closely with home health. Now, home health and home care, it's two totally different things. It's very confusing. Home
Mhm.
health is a skilled service that, as Gina obviously knows with being doing OT, but physical therapy, occupational therapy in the home, we align with that perfectly because we help our clients do their exercises in between those physical therapy visits or occupational therapy visits. So we work hand in hand with them. We work hand in hand with palliative care, with hospice care, and now even hospital at home, which is taking a hold in the Charlotte area, which is really fascinating to me. You have all these aligned providers now that can help people age in place at home. Whereas this was non-existent, 20, 30 years ago to have all of these services that are available.
Yeah, it is wonderful to have access to that. Yeah, and to differentiate. I just wanted to have you differentiate too. If you're getting home health services with skilled therapy, you might have a certified nursing assistant, but the people employed through Visiting Angels, they're caregivers, correct? You don't have nursing assistants.
Yeah, so we technically, under our license in the state of North Carolina, are considered non-medical. It's kind of confusing because we can do hands-on care, what's labeled as personal care, so
Hmm.
bathing, dressing, grooming. We can do all of those things. All of our caregivers have CNA level training. They're not necessarily nursing assistants,
Oh,
but
okay.
we are also required to have nurses supervise all of our care and do all of our
Okay.
care plans. So our nurses on staff train our caregivers who go in the home and provide the actual services. But in home care in North Carolina, every state's different, but in
Mhm.
North Carolina, it's considered actually non-medical, even though we have to have nurses on staff. But that's who the people who are providing the actual care. We don't do injections. We don't do feeding tubes. We don't do trachs. We don't do what's called, as you know, skilled nursing. That's where we partner with home health. So we
Mhm.
can provide all of those services that are needed because people, if they need those skilled services, they're most likely going to need our services as
Mhm.
well. And we can do stuff around the house. We can do light housekeeping and laundry and all the things that help people throughout the day.
Mhm.
Wow, can you come and do that here? I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. That's the funny thing, Don, is I was talking earlier about people being resistant. Once they get the service, they're like, this is pretty good. They're cooking a meal for me. They're doing my laundry. So yeah, I'm ready for it myself.
Yeah, I know my mom, she had, for a while, my dad was at home with her. She had two caregivers, and the one did great with the housework, and she had a list of things for her to do. The other one was a lot better with my dad. Um, yeah, so she kind of got into a routine with them. But so your caregivers have nursing assistant training? They're not necessarily certified nursing
Yeah, they
assistants?
don't have to be certified under our license. Some are. We do have some CNAs who have kept their
Okay.
license, but we train on that level. So they know how to use a gait belt, which helps people transfer. They know how to use a Hoyer lift, which a
Mhm.
lot of facilities don't even allow, but we can do that. So we
Hmm.
can do more than most facilities can.
Okay.
So they all get that hands-on type training for bathing assistance. And the other big component that we train on is dementia care. So how to interact, communicate with those with dementia. As I said at the beginning, my mom had Alzheimer's, so I've been a dementia educator for years. That
Hmm.
is the ongoing. 80% of our clientele have some form of memory loss of dementia.
Sure. That's great that that you got your caregivers have that training because just seeing different caregiver agencies, both professionally and with my mom, they're not always nursing assistants, and there can be caregivers that don't have a high level of education in caring for someone. And that dementia care component is, like you said, it's most of those people have a level of that, and knowing how to work and communicate with them makes a big difference. Because my dad had Parkinson's in his advanced years of, he had dementia in his advanced years of Parkinson's. So that whole new component that was
Which
added.
for 20 to 25% of Parkinson's cases, they do get a dementia that mirrors Alzheimer's disease for sure. So yeah, it's a common thing for most of our clientele. We see mild cases of dementia all the way up to very pronounced cases of dementia. And our caregivers, it's not always easy taking care of someone with dementia. That
Mm,
some are
no.
delightful. They forgot what you told them 2 minutes ago, but others can be quite challenging.
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with Teepa Snow.
I'm very familiar with Teepa. In fact, I brought her to the Mooresville area about 10 years ago. We sold out a symposium with her in
Wow.
a half hour. So I've been following her ever since. We use some of her training modules for our training. If for those who don't know her, she actually acts out her training. So she becomes the Alzheimer's patient, and she really gives you that immersion of what it's like to interact with someone with dementia. She's phenomenal, and she's North Carolina based, but now she's so well known throughout the whole country.
Yeah, we actually got to interview her um, whenever it was, a couple months back. So,
Yeah,
um,
she was a trip. She was a lot of fun.
She is. That's what she brings. I've always said when you're doing education, you're not only educating people and hopefully inspiring, but you gotta entertain them to keep their interest. And
Yeah,
right.
she has that component that she keeps you, involved in everything she's saying.
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because there's so many nuance, kind of soft skills of working with people with dementia and really seniors in general, knowing how to approach them, knowing the best way, to get their participation involvement. I mean, I've learned that as an occupational therapist, and I do a lot of educating, with family members too, that it's all in how we approach somebody, whether we can get
Yes.
cooperation or not. So it's great that your company has that ability to utilize her trainings and um,
Well, it's so complex too. You've got all these different, we had Parkinson's and dementia. Well, there could be somebody with that's do oh, I don't know. I can't even mention the different things, but there's so many different ones that it's different communication with each one. So you have to be able to
And
adapt on that.
and everyone's different. And all these
yeah,
diseases,
right.
Pick's disease, Huntington's disease, Alzheimer's
Yeah.
disease, Lewy body disease, Parkinson's. So everybody's different. Everyone reacts different. The one thing that I find that most families struggle with the disease process is we always tend to think of the disease going down in a spiral like this in any disease. That's how we think of it. But dementia can go big drop, level, big drop. My mom, for instance, on a Friday knew who I was. She couldn't remember, what we talked about 5 minutes early, knew my name. The very next day, it was gone. She didn't know who I was and never did after that point. So
Mhm.
everyone's different, but in with dementia, especially with Alzheimer's, you can see these huge dips that create a new baseline level, and that's hard. That's hard to deal with because you can't really emotionally prepare for that as a adult child or a spouse. So there's so many, Don, like you said, there's so many complexities involved when we're talking about dementia, and it's I never sugarcoat it with families. I'm like, this is going to be a tough journey, but visiting
Mhm.
angels is going to be with you on the journey. And like I said, having had that experience myself, I literally, before I meet with any family to talk about our services, I close my eyes and remember what was that feeling
Mhm.
That overwhelming feeling I had when I was looking for help for my mom. And then I'm in their shoes and I know exactly how they're feeling and I can approach it from their perspective instead of from an outside perspective.
Right, right.
Well, you also mentioned the idea of respite care, I think for caregivers.
Yeah, so and that's another. I'm glad you brought that up. So that's another thing. When I meet with a family, especially a husband and wife, let's say the husband's the one with the care needs, I will tell the wife, we're not just here for him, we're here for you as well because you're the primary caregiver. Quite often, they're already burned out by the time they've called us because people aren't proactive like they should be. And she or he would need respite. They need a break. There's a great book, and you may have heard of it, called You Take the Oxygen First, which, if you get on an airplane and they say, if we lose cabin pressure, you take the oxygen and then you put it on your loved one. Why? Because if you're not breathing, you're not going to be able to help your loved one. Same thing in caregiving. If you're not healthy, how can you be the best caregiver you can be? So you need those breaks, but there's so much emotional components to this. The the spouse who wants to be loyal to their, I have to be with them all of the time. Um, there's so much emotion involved that they sacrifice their own health quite often. And I've seen caregivers pass away quicker than the ones they're caregiving for because of the
Yeah.
stress, because of the
Yeah.
stress. So respite is huge. It's a huge factor. And when we go into a family, I'm like, we're here not only to help the person who needs the physical help, but the rest of the family who needs a break as well.
Yeah.
Well, and, you talk about the emotional part. It's on the caregiver too, but it's also a lot of times I've seen it where and her dad was like that as a little bit of where's Ellen at? Where's she at? And they get almost connected to her where if she leaves, then they can get a little
Yeah, my
outraged,
mom found
whatever.
when the caregivers were in the house, if she was still in the house too, that he was following her around. And so it was better if she wasn't there. And if she didn't have errands to do, we're like, just go to the coffee house and hang out, mom. Just,
And that's hard to do. That's hard to do. Well, he needs me. I can't leave. It's hard to break away. A lot of caregivers understand it theoretically, but
Mhm.
when those emotions start to hit, it's not easy to walk away. It's not easy to agree and say, yeah, I'm going to do this until they can start doing it and see the positive outcomes it has on themselves and on
Mm.
their loved one as well.
Yeah. And as far as the proactive part, getting help before dementia progresses to an extreme point, it can be easier to make that adjustment with the familiarity of someone coming in. Like with my dad, he had very mild dementia initially, and he was a people person. He loved people being around, but when his dementia got more severe, he was suspicious of strangers and outside people. And I had been pushing my mom for years. Oh, we're not ready for that yet. You know what? Think about bringing a caregiver in. Oh, we're not ready for that yet. And just, you know, it's better to get it early so that it's already established and that they're familiar with someone coming in.
It's very difficult, and there's a role reversal that often takes place between the adult child and their parents, and that's not easy on anyone. But
Mhm.
like I said, when I try to establish a rapport with families that I'm working with, I give the tough love pretty quickly and say, this is really what I feel you should do, and the toughest of all of it is taking the car keys away.
Oh, yeah,
Biggest sense of independence, and that's the toughest one. But
sure.
all these other things we've been talking about, none of this is easy. But
Right.
once people start to, take that first baby step, they realize, oh yeah, this really is going to be beneficial for all involved. And we take it beyond what we do. So if we have someone who's very advanced dementia and they really need to be in a locked secured unit, I'll go and tour with them at a memory care. I know all the local ones. I'd be glad. I want the patient, the client to get what they need, even if it means we're losing the client. I know we're doing the right thing.
Right. Right. And sometimes they still need a caregiver in those settings.
They do.
We
And we
hired
just
someone for my dad. Yeah.
we just
Um,
had one of our clients move to memory care, but they still want the care because it's his buddy. He can't remember her name, but he knows her face, and so she still goes in several times a week to the memory care because
mhm.
they've established that bond. And he still understands it.
Sure. Because, yeah, you're not going to really get direct one-on-one care even in a facility like
No,
that.
and that's unfortunately most people don't realize that. There's
Hmm.
a big misunderstanding with that, and there's also a big misunderstanding with hospice care. Hospice care is wonderful, but people think it's all the time comprehensive, where really it's just a couple hours a week
Hmm.
with a nurse or social worker coming in. It's not comprehensive, and they often need visiting angels to supplement that. So
Sure.
I was naive when before I got into healthcare. I thought hospice was one giant organization like the Red Cross, and that you went to a place, not realizing that most hospice care takes place at home, 98%.
Hmm.
So, the general public, I always have to remember to not use acronyms and things that they don't understand what we're talking about, and put myself once again in their shoes. They don't know. And they want us to tell them what our knowledge is so that we can help them, go along this path.
I want to ask one more question about medication management because I see this confusion in our facility. As far as I know, nurses are really the only ones who can really deal with that. So, do your caregivers assist with people taking medication, following, you know, filling up pill cases? Like, what's the line there as
Well,
far as what
the
they can
law
do?
is, and I know we follow it. I wish I could say I was confident all home care followed it. The law for home care licensees are we can do medication reminders. We cannot touch a medication. Now, we can bring a pill bottle over to the client and say, it's time to take your pill, but they have to be able to either open the pill bottle or the pill case. We cannot put pills in a pill case. We
Hmm.
cannot tell a client when they should take their med. That has to come from a doctor and be in our care plan where the doctor says this pill is for at 2 o'clock or is at evening time. We
Hmm.
can only remind the client to take their pill. We can bring them the actual case, but we can't take the medication out. We can't touch the medication.
Right.
I wish I could be confident that all home care operators are acting under those laws. I know Visiting Angels does because they're very strict, and I understand why. You need professionals to handle medication, whether it be nurses or med techs. You need someone who understands the exact dosage and how it all works.
Yeah, that's the thing. I see families are confused by that because the agency that works out of the independent living I work at, they do medication reminders, but the family thinks that means they're filling up their pill case. They think, because I work with people to see can they be independent with managing their medications or, and a lot of times we set up pill cases for like a month and the family can fill it up and then they have the caregiver who reminds them. But families don't understand those differences.
Yeah.
They sometimes make assumptions and just I know I do a lot of educating on that, but
It's confusing. Like I said, when you're talking home care and home health, it sounds like it's the same thing. When you're
mhm,
talking medication management or medication reminders, people aren't thinking that there's any difference there. So
mhm.
I totally get it. Yeah.
And it's such a big thing and such an important thing. There's so many great reminders now, pill cases and things, and like the med packs now that some pharmacies will put together,
Yeah.
where it's set up for the times a day that it's taken. And I imagine, um, your caregiver could hand them the pill pack and they open it
Yeah.
up and take it themselves. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
some,
It's we think about overdosing, but underdosing is just as important to think about. And someone not getting their meds can make a huge difference in their overall health.
Sure. Yeah, it's a huge thing. I see patients all the time. They're like, "Oh, I don't think I need that. I'm feeling okay." They just don't
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
medicine. That can be a real challenge. So yeah, thank you for clarifying that because that was my understanding of the law, and I just think it's helpful for people. That's why we do this podcast to help
Yeah.
educate people, for them to understand the nuances and the differences, like you said, with home care versus home health services. Yeah, one's paid for by insurance, and the other one is not typically. Um,
Correct. And even people in the industry don't know the difference. There's a lot of people I've gone to doctor's office who had no idea what the difference is. They just assume
right,
they both can do the same thing.
right.
But yeah, cost is a whole nother subject. But yes, primarily home care is private pay. If you're like us at Visiting Angels, we are a veterans approved provider, so we can
Oh, okay.
help with, veterans can get a lot of benefits. and we can provide those services. And then long-term care insurance is a popular option. But outside of that, most of home care is privately paid, and it can be quite expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't realize if they have VA benefits that it will pay for caregivers and things, and then you can pick your agency of where you're
Yeah.
getting the caregivers from.
It's a great benefit. Unfortunately, the VA doesn't do a good job of promoting it. And on the flip side of that, I get a call at least twice a week saying, "Hey, I'm ready for home care. I got Medicare." They just assume Medicare is going to cover
Oh,
home care, and doesn't cover anything. And Medicare Advantage plans are confusing people greatly into thinking they can get home care. They cannot get home care under Medicare Advantage. Maybe someday, but not today.
right, right. Yeah, there's qualifications and things that people don't understand that it's
Well, we could talk on this conversation probably all day. There's so much to it. Um, but I think for now we're going to probably start wrapping it up. So what I was going to ask is, you know, one, if you want to give another tip, if there's another tip in your mind that you want to give, and then tell us about, how would people find out more about visiting Angel?
So, I gave my two biggest tips of, resistance to care and being proactive. I think really people just have to think about, it's really going along with that proactive. The internet's an amazing thing, good and bad. The good part is there's a ton of information out there about senior care and the labyrinth that it is. So if people would just take even 10 minutes to, go on Google and search senior care, or how do I find help for mom, or whatever it might be, they could really quickly and with AI these days, you go to Chat GPT and say, "Hey, tell me about what home care is," and you will get a great summary. An easy tip if you're on the internet at all, which most people are. And as far as getting a hold of us, just Google visiting Angels Lake Norman. I can give our phone number, but does anyone have a pen ready? Probably not. But they,
and
but, but
we'll
they,
put that
We'll put it up
in
on
the
the,
but
description.
they know about Google. So go to Google, you put in Visiting Angels Lake Norman, and you will get all the information that you need about us. That is where people do things. If I'm looking for a restaurant, I'm going on Google. If I'm looking for home care, I'm going on Google, because you can see real-time reviews, you can see
Right.
information, and it's just fast and efficient. So when people say, "How do they get a hold of me?" Go on Google, Visiting Angels Lake Norman.
maybe just don't follow the Dr. Google, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Google or Dr. WebMD can be dangerous, but it's okay to look at it. Just don't assume you know the answer.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But for finding resources, it's great. And it sounds like Visiting Angels is the largest provider in the country, so they have them in most states across the
Yeah,
country.
every state, just about every major market. There's four in the greater Charlotte area. So yeah, it's very widespread. And obviously I know the sister ones in our area. They all are excellent. If someone asks about New Mexico, I wouldn't necessarily know how good but there are, standards that Visiting Angels franchises have to adhere to. So I'm confident that most, if not all, are adhering to those high standards.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, because our audience is across the country and just yeah, there's different services and agencies and small local ones, but knowing that yeah, Visiting Angels has those particular standards across the
And
board.
for
So
people, go on Google, look at reviews. Reviews are
sure,
great. They will tell you things. You can see what people say, and you can see if it's a disgruntled worker put 1 star and said, they didn't give me, this or you can decipher what these reviews really are about, and how
sure,
valid they are.
sure. Well, thank you so much for being here to join us, Stuart. We really appreciate it. We'll share the information about Visiting Angels, and I can attest how helpful they were for my dad and my mom. And we'll share your information. We want to thank everyone for joining our podcast today. Please give feedback and share and comments and like and pass this podcast on to others so they can learn more information about how we can help care for your aging loved one. You can see more at our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. You'll see links to this podcast and other podcasts. You can watch these on YouTube as well as listening to them anywhere you listen to your podcast. Don and I air a podcast. We drop it every Thursday, every week. Be sure to tune in Thursday nights, 7 Eastern Standard Time. Don does EFT tapping. So he leads.
Tuesday.
Did I say the wrong day? Tuesdays. He leads tapping online. You can learn about what it is. It's a chance to engage in this modality for free. A lot to do with managing stress and anxiety, which is something that
That's another whole segment of this.
sure, and there's so many components of that. So find us at Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, Instagram Focused Healthy Family 1, YouTube Focused Healthy Family. And again, thank you for being here with us today, Stuart, and join us for our future podcast. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.